A millionaire freezes upon seeing a woman with two 7-year-old girls identical to his late wife, who died 6 years ago, begging outside the restaurant where he was having lunch. Before we dive into the story, drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Enjoy the story. The morning sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Maxwell Thornton's corner office on the 52nd floor of Chicago's most prestigious business district. At 45, Maxwell had everything a man could want. Almost everything. "Mr. Thornton, your 10 o'clock is waiting," Jessica, his ever-efficient assistant, announced from the doorway. Her concerned eyes lingered on the untouched coffee on his desk, the third cup that morning. "Give me 5 minutes," Maxwell replied, his voice carrying the weight of authority that had built Thornton Enterprises into a real estate empire. He turned to face the Chicago skyline, a vista he had helped shape over 2 decades. His reflection stared back at him, impeccably tailored suit, salt and pepper hair that magazine profiles called distinguished, and eyes that hadn't truly smiled in 7 years. Success had been his faithful companion, but happiness remained elusive. "Sir," Jessica hesitated at the door, "don't forget the charity gala tonight. I've laid out all the details." Maxwell nodded absently. These social obligations were necessary evils, empty rituals that punctuated his carefully constructed routine. Breakfast at 6:30, office by 8, meetings until 7, then dinner alone in his Lincoln Park mansion. "It's been 10 years today, hasn't it?" Jessica added softly. Maxwell's jaw tightened. 10 years since he had met Eleanor at a similar charity event. A decade since the brilliant research physician with laughing eyes had walked into his life and changed everything. And 7 years since the accident had taken her away. "Cancel the gala," he said suddenly. "Tell them I'll double my usual donation." The drive home that evening took him past the University Medical Center where Eleanor had worked. Maxwell rarely allowed himself to revisit memories, but tonight they washed over him unbidden. Eleanor in a blue dress at the gala, challenging his views on healthcare development. Eleanor in the garden of their home, planning where they would plant oak trees for our grandchildren to climb. Eleanor's face, luminous with joy on their wedding day. 3 years of perfect happiness before that rainy night when his world collapsed. The mansion stood silent as Maxwell entered. Mrs. Peterson, the housekeeper, had left dinner in the warming oven as she did every evening. He walked past it, climbing the grand staircase to the east wing that remained untouched since Eleanor's death. Her office was exactly as she had left it, research papers neatly stacked, her favorite fountain pen beside them, family photos arranged on the desk. He ran his fingers over the spines of medical journals on the bookshelf, feeling the familiar ache in his chest. "I miss you," he whispered to the empty room. "Every day." His phone rang, shattering the moment. Jessica calling about tomorrow's meeting with investors for the downtown development project, the massive urban renewal that consumed his waking hours. "Get some rest, Mr. Thornton," she urged. "The Anderson Group is flying in specifically to meet you." "I'll be ready," he assured her, his mask of competence sliding back into place. Maxwell Thornton, the man who had everything except what mattered most. The luxurious interior of a Linea restaurant provided the perfect backdrop for Maxwell's business lunch with the Anderson Group executives. Sunlight filtered through the elegant windows, illuminating the exclusive space where Chicago's elite made million-dollar deals over artfully plated cuisine. "The downtown project will revitalize 10 city blocks," Maxwell explained, his voice carrying the practiced confidence that had closed countless deals. "We're not just building properties, we're creating a legacy." Richard Anderson nodded approvingly, but Maxwell's attention suddenly drifted. Through the restaurant's pristine glass facade, a familiar silhouette on the sidewalk across the street made his heart stop. A woman with honey blonde hair pulled into a messy bun stood with 2 small girls, their clothes worn and faded. Despite her disheveled appearance, the woman's profile was unmistakable. The same delicate nose, the same graceful neck that he had memorized during 7 years of grief. "Eleanor," Maxwell whispered, his water glass slipping from his fingers and shattering on the floor. "Mr. Thornton, are you all right?" Anderson's voice seemed to come from miles away. Maxwell was already on his feet, napkin dropped, chair toppled backward. He moved as if in a trance, weaving between tables, ignoring the maitre d's concerned inquiries. His heart pounded against his ribs as he burst through the restaurant doors onto Michigan Avenue. The woman looked up, her eyes widening in recognition, and was that fear? In an instant, she grabbed the girl's hands and turned to flee. "Wait," Maxwell called out, pushing through the crowded sidewalk. "Please wait." Pedestrians blocked his path as the woman and children disappeared around a corner. Maxwell broke into a run, his expensive leather shoes slapping against the pavement. When he turned the corner, he caught a glimpse of them darting into an alley. The smaller of the two girls looked back, her face a miniature version of Eleanor's. Their eyes met across the distance, and the child broke away from the woman, running back toward him. "Lily, no!" the woman cried out in a voice that sent chills down Maxwell's spine. Eleanor's voice, though rougher, more desperate. The little girl reached Maxwell, looking up with eyes that mirrored his own. "Daddy," she said with certainty beyond her years. "She always said you would find us." Maxwell fell to his knees, his world tilting on its axis. The woman had stopped running and stood frozen at the alley entrance, the other child clutching her hand. "Eleanor," he breathed, reaching out as if he could bridge the 30 feet between them with his fingertips. The woman shook her head slightly, tears streaming down her face. Maxwell tried to stand, to move toward her, but a wave of dizziness overwhelmed him. The last thing he saw before darkness claimed him was Eleanor's face, gaunt and terrified, yet undeniably alive. He awoke to the harsh fluorescent lights of Northwestern Memorial Hospital and the concerned face of Dr. Williams, his physician for the past decade. "You collapsed on Michigan Avenue," the doctor explained. "Stress-induced syncope, most likely. Your assistant is outside." "The woman," Maxwell struggled to sit up, "and the children." Dr. Williams exchanged a glance with the nurse. "Mr. Thornton, witnesses say you were alone when you collapsed. There was no woman, no children." "That's impossible," Maxwell insisted, the memory of the girl's words burning in his mind. "I need to find them now." The underside of Chicago's gleaming infrastructure told a different story than its polished skyscrapers. Beneath the Roosevelt Road viaduct, Amanda clutched her daughters close as evening shadows lengthened across their temporary shelter. "We need to leave tonight," she whispered, her hands trembling as she stuffed their meager belongings into a worn backpack. "He saw us. It's not safe anymore." 6-year-old Rose looked up at her mother, her intelligent eyes far too perceptive for a child her age. "He looked sad, Mama. Not dangerous." "The sad ones are the most dangerous," Amanda replied, her voice carrying echoes of education and refinement that seemed incongruous with her ragged appearance. "We've talked about this. Trust no one." Lily, Rose's identical twin, organized their small collection of books with methodical precision. "He's the man from your pictures," she stated matter-of-factly, "the ones you cry over when you think we're sleeping." Amanda froze, her face a mask of pain and longing. For a moment she looked exactly like Eleanor Thornton, the brilliant research physician whose obituary had made national headlines 7 years ago. "Mama needs a minute," she murmured, stepping away to compose herself. The twins exchanged a meaningful glance, a silent communication that went beyond words. Rose nodded imperceptibly, and Lily arranged 3 small stones in a pattern only they understood. "We should collect provisions before departing," Rose announced, her vocabulary startlingly advanced. "The abandoned garden in Burnham Park has edible plants," Lily nodded. "Taraxacum officinale and Portulaca oleracea are in season. We can harvest enough for 3 days." Amanda returned, her resolve visibly strengthened. "We'll catch the midnight bus to Milwaukee. I have enough for tickets." She didn't mention that it was their last emergency cash, hidden inside the lining of her worn coat for years. As dusk fell, they ventured to the neglected corner of Burnham Park, where nature had reclaimed an old community garden. The twins moved, with practiced efficiency, identifying plants that most adults would overlook. Dandelion greens here, Rose whispered, carefully harvesting the leaves. Purslane near the fence, Lily replied without looking up. High in omega-3 fatty acids. Amanda watched her daughters with a mixture of pride and heartbreak. They had never known a normal childhood. No schools, no friends, no stability. Just constant movement, fake names, and survival lessons disguised as games. Do you think he recognized you? Rose asked suddenly, her small hands never pausing in their work. Amanda swallowed hard. Yes. Will he look for us? Lily's question hung in the twilight air. Maxwell never stops once he starts something, Amanda replied, her voice distant with memories. It's what made him successful, and what made him dangerous. Later, as they huddled beneath the viaduct waiting for midnight, Lily suddenly clutched her sister's hand. Rose nodded as if answering an unspoken question. Someone's coming, they whispered in unison. Amanda tensed, pulling them into deeper shadows as footsteps approached. A police officer passed by, flashlight sweeping across their hiding place. We need to move, Amanda whispered once the officer was gone. They'll be looking for us now. The twins shared another silent exchange, their faces solemn beyond their years. We know another place, Rose said. The church with the nice man, Lily added. The one who gave us bread last winter. Father Michael, they finished together. Amanda hesitated, then nodded. The Church of St. Catherine had been a rare sanctuary during a brutal Chicago winter. The priest had asked no questions when they appeared at the soup kitchen, just offered warmth and kindness. Just for tonight, she conceded. Tomorrow we disappear completely. The morning light cast long shadows across Sarah Blackwood's cluttered office in a converted warehouse on Chicago's west side. Coffee cup in hand, she studied the man sitting across from her desk. Immaculately dressed, clearly wealthy, and utterly desperate. Let me get this straight, Mr. Thornton, Sarah said, brushing a strand of graying hair from her face. You believe your wife, who died 7 years ago, is alive and living as a homeless woman with 2 children, who are supposedly yours. Maxwell leaned forward. I know how it sounds. It sounds like grief playing tricks on your mind, Sarah replied, not unkindly. 20 years with Chicago PD's missing persons unit had taught her that grief could create phantoms more convincing than flesh and blood. I'm not crazy, Detective Blackwood. Former detective, she corrected him. And I didn't say, you were crazy. I said grief is powerful. Sarah studied the file Maxwell had brought. Newspaper clippings of Eleanor Thornton's tragic accident, the obituary that praised her medical research, photos of a beautiful woman with intelligent eyes and a smile that reached them. You were released from the hospital yesterday with a diagnosis of stress-induced collapse, Sarah noted. Doctors recommended psychiatric evaluation. I don't need a psychiatrist. I need someone who can find people. Maxwell pulled out his phone, showing her his banking app. My retainer. Name your price. Sarah frowned. I don't work for rich men who think money solves everything. Then work for a man who saw his dead wife yesterday. Maxwell challenged, his voice breaking, who heard a little girl call him Daddy. Something in his eyes gave Sarah pause. Not delusion, but the raw clarity of someone whose world had been upended. She'd seen that look before, in victims whose reality had been shattered by truth, not fantasy. Tell me about the children, she said finally. 2 girls. Identical twins. About 6 years old. Maxwell's hands trembled slightly. Eleanor never told me she was pregnant. Sarah's investigator instincts stirred. The timeline might work. If Eleanor had discovered her pregnancy shortly before her death, or if the death itself had been. I'll need access to everything, she decided. Medical records, accident reports, funeral documentation, everything. Does that mean you'll help me? Sarah stood, walking to the window that overlooked the city. It means I'll look into it. No, promises beyond that. Thank you, Maxwell breathed, relief washing over his face. Don't thank me yet, Sarah warned. If your wife faked her death and has been hiding from you for 7 years, you might not like what I find. 2 hours later, Sarah sat in her car outside Northwestern Memorial Hospital, reviewing the medical records a sympathetic nurse had provided. Something wasn't adding up. Eleanor Thornton's body had been brought in on March 17, 2018, victim of a single-vehicle accident on Lakeshore Drive during a rainstorm. The attending physician had pronounced her dead on arrival. The death certificate cited massive trauma as cause of death. Yet the medical examiner's report was surprisingly brief. No detailed autopsy findings, just a signature from Dr. Raymond Chen confirming identity and cause of death. The body had been cremated within 48 hours, unusually fast, especially for someone of the Thornton social standing. Sarah made a note to check on Dr. Chen, then dialed a former colleague still working at the medical examiner's office. "Mike, it's Sarah, I need a favor. Dr. Raymond Chen, was he working there in 2018? The answer made her sit up straighter. Left the country? When exactly? She scribbled notes rapidly. The day after the Thornton cremation? That's convenient. Any idea where he went? Sarah ended the call, staring thoughtfully at Eleanor's photograph. Beautiful, brilliant Dr. Thornton, research physician specializing in genetic medicine, happily married, tragically killed at 35 or perhaps not. What were you running from, Eleanor? Sarah murmured to the photograph. And why did you let your husband believe you were dead? The home theater in Maxwell's mansion had been transformed into an investigation hub. Photos of Eleanor covered the walls, wedding pictures, vacation snapshots, formal portraits from charity events. In the center of it all, Maxwell stood frozen before a paused video. Play it again, he commanded softly. The screen flickered to life, showing Eleanor at their 3rd anniversary party, laughing as she cut their cake. Maxwell studied her face frame by frame, comparing it to the mental image of the woman he'd seen. Outside Alinea, "It's her, Sarah. I'd stake my life on it." Sarah Blackwood nodded non-committally, her attention focused on financial records spread across a table. "These quarterly transfers from your personal account, $250,000 each to Grand Cayman accounts. Did you authorize them?" Maxwell frowned, examining the statements. "Some are legitimate donations to research foundations Eleanor supported. But these others?" He pointed to several transactions. "I've never seen these before." "They started 3 months before Eleanor's death and continued for 2 years after," Sarah noted. "Your financial advisor didn't flag them?" "Edward Winters has handled my finances for 15 years. He wouldn't." Maxwell's voice trailed off as doubt crept in. "Unless he was instructed to." Sarah watched realization dawn on his face. "By Eleanor?" Maxwell ran his hands through his hair, the gesture making him look suddenly vulnerable. "If she needed money to disappear, she had access to our accounts. But why not just tell me? Why let me think she was dead?" "Unless she was afraid of you," Sarah suggested carefully. The flash of pain in Maxwell's eyes seemed genuine. "I never gave her reason to fear me. Never." Sarah's phone buzzed with a text from her contact at the medical examiner's office. Chen relocated to Switzerland. Prestigious job offer came suddenly. Still there, according to LinkedIn. Switzerland. The word triggered something in Maxwell's memory. Eleanor consulted for a Swiss research lab the year before she died, he said. Reinhardt Institute. She traveled there 3 times. Sarah added this to her growing notes. "I'll look into them." As Sarah left to pursue this lead, Maxwell wandered into Eleanor's preserved office, drawn by an inexplicable impulse. He'd kept everything exactly as she left it, her books, her papers, even the half-empty bottle of hand lotion she'd imported from France. His fingers traced the spines of medical journals on her bookshelf, stopping at Advances in Genetic Therapy. Eleanor had co-authored a chapter. As he pulled it out, something clattered to the floor. A small USB drive hidden behind the books. Maxwell stared at it, heart racing. Had it always been there? Had he simply missed it during 7 years of morning visits to this room? The drive was password protected. Maxwell tried their anniversary date. Access denied. Her birthday. Denied. His birthday. Denied. He closed his eyes, thinking of Eleanor's security habits. She'd always used meaningful phrases from their relationship, claiming they were easier to remember than random characters. "Where we first met," he typed. "Denied." "Our wedding song." "Denied." Maxwell paused, remembering a conversation from their honeymoon. Eleanor had talked about her childhood home in Minnesota, the willow tree where she'd built her first treehouse, how she'd painted the door blue because it was grandfather's favorite color, Maxwell typed. The drive unlocked. A single folder appeared labeled with today's date from 7 years ago. Inside was a video file and a text document titled, "If You're Reading This." Maxwell's hand trembled as he clicked the video file. Eleanor's face filled the screen, her expression grave. She wore the same clothes she had the morning of her accident. "Maxwell, if you've found this, then something has happened to me," she began. "Or rather, something has happened that made me take drastic action. I hope someday you'll understand why I couldn't tell you the truth. They're watching us. They're always watching." Eleanor looked over her shoulder, fear evident in her eyes. "The Reinhardt Institute isn't what it seems. Victoria's project." The video cut off abruptly. Maxwell clicked the text file, his world tilting, as he read the first line. "If I survive, I'll contact you using our special signal. If not, this is goodbye." The glass walls of Victoria Reinhardt's private office showcased a breathtaking panorama of the Swiss Alps, a view that had graced countless medical journals profiling the visionary of genetic medicine. At 58, Dr. Reinhardt carried herself with the confidence of someone accustomed to bending the world to her will. "Our investors are growing impatient, Dr. Reinhardt," remarked her chief financial officer, sliding quarterly reports across her immaculate desk. "They expected viable results from Project Genesis by now." Victoria's perfectly manicured fingers tapped a rhythmic pattern on her desk as she gazed out at the snow-capped mountains. "Science cannot be rushed, Mr. Keller, even when we're rewriting the very code of humanity." Her intercom buzzed. "Dr. Reinhardt, secure call on line 3. Victoria dismissed her CFO with a wave. When the door closed, she activated the room's security protocols: electromagnetic shielding, white noise generators, signal scramblers before picking up the phone. "This is Reinhardt." The caller's voice was tense. "We have a situation in Chicago. Subject E7 has been compromised." Victoria's expression hardened. "Impossible. Eleanor Thornton is dead." Facial recognition from city surveillance confirmed it. The caller continued. "She was spotted with the twins near Michigan Avenue. Maxwell Thornton saw them." The temperature in the room seemed to drop as Victoria absorbed this information. "The twins were with her? In public?" "Yes, doctor. And one of them approached Thornton directly." Victoria's hand tightened around a crystal paperweight, the only indication of her fury. "Unacceptable. The subjects were never supposed to make contact with their biological father. Their genetic modifications make them far too valuable to risk exposure." She swiveled her chair toward 3 large monitors displaying data on multiple test subjects across various facilities. E7 and her offspring had been her most promising success story, until Eleanor discovered the truth about Project Genesis and fled with the twins. "Activate containment protocol," Victoria ordered. "I want them located and extracted within 24 hours. "And Thornton?" Victoria considered the implications. Maxwell Thornton was wealthy, connected, and now aware his dead wife might be alive. A dangerous combination. Distract him. Use the usual methods: financial irregularities, legal complications with his development project. If that fails, more permanent solutions may be necessary. After ending the call, Victoria accessed a secure server containing video files labeled E7 monitoring. The earliest footage showed Eleanor Thornton in a lab coat, excited about joining the Reinhardt Institute as a consultant. Subsequent videos documented her growing suspicion as she uncovered fragments of Project Genesis. The final recording captured Eleanor's horror upon discovering her own pregnancy had been manipulated, that the twin embryos she carried had been genetically modified without her knowledge or consent. Victoria fast-forwarded through years of surveillance, Eleanor in disguise moving from city to city, the twins developing abilities that exceeded even Victoria's ambitious projections. Their accelerated healing, enhanced cognitive functions, and most intriguingly, their apparent ability to communicate without speaking, represented breakthroughs that would revolutionize human evolution. 7 years of hiding, Victoria murmured. Impressive, Eleanor, but futile. She opened a drawer containing a dossier on Maxwell Thornton. His financial records showed the carefully disguised transfers that had unknowingly funded parts of Project Genesis through shell companies. His psychological profile highlighted his determination, intelligence, and the emotional vulnerability created by Eleanor's death. Victoria closed the file. Decision made. Prepare my jet, she instructed her assistant through the intercom. I'm going to Chicago. In the adjacent laboratory, scientists in white coats monitored children with abilities similar to the twins, the next generation of Project Genesis. Unlike the twins, these children had never known freedom. Their genetic code, like their lives, belonged to Victoria Reinhardt. We're so close, Victoria whispered, watching a child spontaneously heal a surgical incision. Eleanor can't be allowed to ruin everything now. St. Catherine's Church stood as a quiet sanctuary amid Chicago's urban landscape, its weathered stone, walls offering refuge to those the city had forgotten. Father Michael O'Connor was locking up after evening mass when a shadow moved near the side entrance. We need help, came a whispered voice. The priest turned to find a gaunt woman with 2 small girls, their faces partially hidden by worn hoodies. Recognition dawned immediately. My God, he breathed. Eleanor? Amanda, she corrected sharply, glancing nervously over her shoulder. Please, Father, just for tonight. Father Michael ushered them through the rectory door without hesitation. Under the hallway light, he was struck by the change in the woman he'd known as Dr. Eleanor Thornton, once his most dedicated hospital volunteer and ethical sounding board. Her cheeks were hollow, her once vibrant eyes now constantly darting, scanning for threats. The basement apartment has a separate entrance, he said, leading them down a narrow staircase. No one will look for you here. The twins moved in perfect synchronization, maintaining exactly 3 steps behind their mother, their matching faces serious beyond their years. When did you last eat? Father Michael asked. The girls answered in unison. Yesterday morning. While Father Michael prepared a simple meal, Amanda paced the small apartment, checking windows and exits. The twins sat perfectly still at the table, their posture identical. Maxwell found us, Amanda said abruptly. He saw us on Michigan Avenue. Father Michael paused. Your husband has been a broken man since your death, Eleanor. Amanda, she insisted. Eleanor died in that car crash. She had to. Did she? Father Michael asked gently. Or did she run from something, or someone? Before she could answer, the twins suddenly turned toward the door in perfect unison. Someone's coming, they whispered together. Across town, Maxwell stared at the USB drive's contents, his mind reeling from Eleanor's warnings about the Reinhardt Institute. A knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. His security team admitted, a man Maxwell hadn't seen in years. Dr. Thomas Wells, Eleanor's former research colleague and their best man. I came as soon as I heard you were looking into Eleanor's work, Thomas said, declining Maxwell's offer of a drink. There are things you need to know. She's alive, Thomas, Maxwell said without preamble. I saw her yesterday. Instead of surprise or disbelief, Thomas's expression showed grim confirmation. Then we have less time than I thought. You knew? Maxwell felt his legs go weak. All this time you knew? I helped her disappear, Thomas admitted. It was the only way to protect her and the babies. Babies? Maxwell echoed, the word landing like a physical blow. The twins. They're mine? Thomas nodded solemnly. Biologically, yes, but there's more to it than that. In her modest apartment, Sarah Blackwood spread Maxwell's financial records across her kitchen table. Something wasn't adding up. The transfers to Cayman accounts had sophisticated routing that professional money launderers would envy. A knock at her door made her reach instinctively for the gun she still kept from her detective days. Through the peephole, she saw a woman, in hospital scrubs. "Jennifer Harris," the woman said through the door. "I was Eleanor Thornton's nurse. Thomas Wells said you might be able to help." Sarah opened the door cautiously. "Help with what?" "The night Eleanor Thornton supposedly died," Jennifer said, her voice trembling slightly. "I was on duty." The woman they brought in wasn't her. The medical examiner knew it too, but someone paid him to falsify the records. Sarah's investigator instincts went on high alert. "Come in. Tell me everything." As Father Michael prepared beds for his guests, the twins sat cross-legged on the floor, their fingertips touching lightly. "The doctor man found Daddy," Lily whispered. "The nurse lady found the detective," Rose added. "They're all coming together," they finished in unison. Amanda watched her daughters with a mixture of wonder and fear. Their connection, their ability to sense events beyond their immediate surroundings, was growing stronger each day. Just one of many secrets she'd been running to protect. Maxwell's hands trembled as he connected Eleanor's USB drive to the secure laptop Thomas had brought. The two men sat in Maxwell's study, the room locked and swept for surveillance devices at Thomas's insistence. "Eleanor discovered something at Reinhardt that terrified her," Thomas explained, his voice low despite their precautions. "Something worth abandoning her life to escape." The drive contained dozens of encrypted files with clinical notations, genetic sequencing data, and research protocols labeled Project Genesis. Most significant was a video folder titled Twin Study Observations. Maxwell clicked on the first video. Two infant girls lay in adjacent cribs monitored by medical equipment. As one baby began to cry, the other immediately became distressed, despite being unable to see or hear her sister. When nurses pricked the first infant's heel for a blood test, both babies showed identical pain responses. Identical twins often share connections, Thomas said. But this was different. The Reinhardt team deliberately separated them to test their neural synchronicity. Maxwell fast-forwarded through months of similar tests. "These are my daughters?" Thomas nodded grimly. Born 6 months after Eleanor's death, she was already pregnant when she discovered what Victoria had done. "What exactly did Victoria do?" Maxwell asked, his voice dangerously quiet. Eleanor was recruited to consult on regenerative medicine research. She didn't know her own fertility treatments at the clinic were part of the experiment, or that Victoria had modified the embryos. Maxwell's face drained of color. "Modified how?" Thomas hesitated. "The twins have unprecedented cellular regeneration capabilities. Cuts heal within hours, broken bones within days. And their neural synchronicity. They communicate without speaking, share sensory experiences across distances." "They're experiments," Maxwell whispered, horror dawning. "My daughters are experiments?" "Valuable ones," Thomas confirmed. "Victoria believes she's creating the next stage of human evolution." Eleanor found records of other children in the program, all showing various genetic enhancements. Maxwell opened the text document Eleanor had left, reading it fully now. "If I survive, I'll contact you using our special signal. If not, this is goodbye, Maxwell. Victoria Reinhardt manipulated my pregnancy. Our daughters carry genetic modifications I never consented to. When I confronted her, I discovered financial connections to your company. I couldn't determine if you were complicit or another victim. Forgiveness, if it's the latter. I've established safe houses and emergency funds using the skills your security team taught me. If you're reading this and I'm truly gone, please find our daughters. Protect them from becoming laboratory specimens. The coordinates below lead to evidence that could expose Project Genesis. I couldn't risk storing it here. Remember our stargazing night in Michigan? That's the key to everything." "I had nothing to do with this," Maxwell said, his voice breaking. "How could she think I'd be part of experimenting on our children?" "Sarah," Blackwood's voice interrupted from the doorway, Jennifer beside her. "Because someone made it look like you were." Sarah spread financial records across the desk. These transfers from your accounts to Reinhardt Shell Companies started before Eleanor discovered she was pregnant. They were sophisticated enough to fool even her. My CFO, Maxwell realized. Edward was Victoria's plant. Jennifer stepped forward. The night of the accident, they brought in a Jane Doe with similar physical characteristics. Eleanor had already escaped with Dr. Chen's help. He arranged the cremation to eliminate evidence, then fled to Switzerland, where he mysteriously died. 3 months later, Sarah added grimly, Maxwell's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Your house is being watched. Get out now. Bring the drive. FB? Maxwell frowned. Father Brian, Thomas suggested. No, Father Michael from St. Catherine's. Eleanor volunteered there. Maxwell's security system suddenly chimed with a perimeter alert. Surveillance cameras showed black SUVs blocking his driveway. Victoria's team, Thomas whispered. They move fast. Sarah checked her gun. We need to go, now. Maxwell grabbed the drive and a photo of Eleanor. The coordinates in her message. What do they point to? Thomas. Check the file. An abandoned industrial property in Pullman. One of the buildings my company acquired 5 years ago. Maxwell realized. Eleanor hid her evidence in plain sight, on property I own. As they slipped out through the service entrance, Maxwell's security chief intercepted them, bleeding from a head wound. Mr. Thornton, armed men breached the east gate. They're claiming to be federal agents, but their credentials are fake. Get to the garage, Maxwell ordered. We need to disappear. The evening mass at St. Catherine's had just ended when Amanda noticed them. Men in dark suits scattered among the departing parishioners, their practiced casualness betrayed by 2 alert eyes scanning the crowd. They've found us, she whispered, to Father Michael as they stood near the altar. The twins were in the rectory basement, presumably safe for the moment. The priest followed her gaze. The side exit through the sacristy. My car is parked behind the rectory. We can't involve you further, Amanda protested. Eleanor, Father Michael said firmly, abandoning pretense. You came to me for help 7 years ago when you discovered what they'd done to your babies. I won't abandon you now. As they moved toward the sacristy, Amanda froze. 2 more agents appeared at the side entrance, speaking into concealed microphones. They've surrounded the building, she realized with growing terror. Father Michael's expression changed, determination replacing concern. The catacombs. The what? When this church was built in 1887, they constructed tunnels connecting to the old freight tunnels under the city. During Prohibition, they moved alcohol through them. He moved to the confessional, pressing a hidden mechanism that revealed a narrow staircase. Few remember they exist. Amanda raced to collect the twins who were already standing at the top of the rectory stairs with their small backpacks. Men in black suits, Lily said matter-of-factly. They have guns under their jackets, Rose added. 8 of them total. They finished together. No time to question how they knew. Amanda grabbed their hands and followed Father Michael into the darkness beneath the church. Across town, Sarah Blackwood's apartment doors splintered inward as armed men in tactical gear stormed the small living space. But Sarah was already gone, having noticed the surveillance team setting up across the street 20 minutes earlier. A lifetime in law enforcement had taught her to recognize a stakeout. She'd slipped out through her building's service exit, taking only her weapon, phone, and the file on Eleanor Thornton. Now she crouched in the alley behind a dumpster, watching, the team searching her apartment. Professional hit squad, she muttered, recognizing their movements. Not cops. Her phone vibrated with a text from Thomas. Maxwell's house compromised, heading to the Pullman property. Meet there if possible. Sarah deleted the message and moved through back alleys toward the nearest L station. Someone with serious resources wanted to shut down their investigation, which meant they were getting close to the truth. Maxwell's private garage housed a collection of luxury vehicles, all easily traceable. Instead, they took his security, chief's personal car, an unremarkable Ford sedan with tinted windows. Stay off main roads, Thomas directed as Maxwell drove. They'll have traffic cameras monitored. Jennifer sat tensely in the back seat. I shouldn't have gotten involved. They'll trace my hospital badge access, find out I pulled Eleanor's records. You did the right thing, Maxwell assured her, navigating through industrial areas where surveillance was minimal. Without you, we might never have connected the pieces. Thomas checked his phone. Sarah's apartment was raided. She got out, heading to Pullman. And Eleanor? Maxwell asked, the name feeling strange on his lips after years of believing her dead. No word from Father Michael yet. As they approached the old Pullman district, once the site of a massive railroad manufacturing empire, now partly abandoned and partly reclaimed by Maxwell's company for redevelopment, an unmarked police car pulled. Behind them. We've got company, Maxwell warned, knuckles white on the steering wheel. Turn here, Thomas instructed. There's a service entrance to the property through the old railway yard. The police car followed, lights suddenly flashing. Maxwell accelerated, skidding around a corner onto cracked concrete that had once served as a loading dock. There, Thomas pointed to a gap in the chain-link fence surrounding an enormous brick structure, the administration building of Maxwell's redevelopment project. Maxwell crashed through, the fence collapsing behind them. They abandoned the car and raced into the shadowy building, navigating by the dim emergency lights of the half-renovated structure. We need to get to the basement archives, Maxwell panted. That's where Eleanor would have hidden anything important. A flashlight beam cut through the darkness ahead of them and they froze. Maxwell, a familiar voice called softly. From the shadows emerged Amanda, the twins close behind her, led by Father Michael through a maintenance doorway. Time seemed to stop as Maxwell stared at the woman he'd mourned for 7 years. Thinner, harder, her hair now brown instead of blonde, but unmistakably Eleanor. You found us, she whispered, her voice catching. The twins studied Maxwell with identical solemn expressions, their eyes, his eyes, assessing him with unnerving intelligence. They're coming, the girls said simultaneously, breaking the moment. Both sides of the building, 12 men total. How do they? Jennifer began. Later, Father Michael interrupted. The basement. Now. The basement of the Pullman administration building smelled of dust and forgotten history. Emergency generators powered minimal lighting as the group descended via a maintenance stairwell. The archives should be through here, Maxwell said, leading them past renovation equipment to a heavy steel door. His keycard granted access to a climate-controlled room filled with architectural drawings and historical documents from the building's railroad era. Eleanor Amanda kept the twins, close, her body language still wary, even in Maxwell's presence. We don't have much time, she said. Victoria's team is thorough. They think you're dead, Maxwell replied, unable to take his eyes off her. I thought you were dead. Eleanor's expression softened momentarily. I had no choice, Maxwell. There's always a choice, he countered, hurt edging his voice. Not when I found out you were funding Victoria's experiments, she shot back. Maxwell recoiled as if struck. I never... The financial transfers from your accounts, Thomas interrupted. We've confirmed they were orchestrated by your CFO, Edward Winters. Victoria placed him in your company years ago, Eleanor explained, her voice gentler now. Before we even met, she planned everything meticulously. Father Michael kept watch at the door while Sarah examined the room's layout. Whatever you hid here, Eleanor, we need to find it now. Eleanor nodded, moving to a section of original blueprints. Help me move this cabinet. Behind it lay a small wall safe concealed by architectural drawings. Eleanor entered a combination. Our anniversary, Maxwell realized as he recognized the numbers. The safe contained a single external hard drive and a sealed medical container. Everything I could gather about Project Genesis, Eleanor explained. Research protocols, genetic sequences, subject profiles, financial records, and this, she indicated the medical container. Blood and tissue samples from the twins, showing the genetic modifications. Thomas examined the container. This is what Victoria fears most, physical evidence of illegal human experimentation. The twins suddenly turned toward the stairwell. They're inside the building, they said. In unison, Sarah checked her weapon. We need an exit strategy. The old freight tunnels, Father Michael suggested. They run under this entire district, connecting to the river. How do you know that? Jennifer asked. I grew up in Pullman, the priest explained. As kids, we explored the tunnels. Most are sealed now, but there should be an access point in the original boiler room. Maxwell nodded. It's on the renovation plans, 2 levels down. Eleanor placed the hard drive and samples in her backpack. It's time you knew everything, she said to Maxwell. Why I ran, what Victoria did to our daughters. As they moved deeper into the building's substructure, Eleanor revealed the full truth. I was recruited to consult on Reinhardt's regenerative medicine research. It seemed revolutionary. Treatments that could accelerate healing, extend lifespans, perhaps even cure previously incurable conditions. They reached a massive chamber once housing industrial boilers, now partially dismantled for renovation. When I discovered I was pregnant, Victoria offered prenatal care through the institute. I never suspected. Eleanor's voice faltered. By the time I realized what she'd done, the modifications to the embryos were irreversible. What exactly did she do to them? Maxwell asked, watching the twins methodically examine the room's perimeter, moving in perfect synchronization. CRISPR gene editing, but with proprietary techniques far beyond what's publicly known, Eleanor explained. She activated genes controlling cellular regeneration, neural plasticity, and, she hesitated, extrasensory perception. They can read minds? Sarah asked skeptically. Not exactly, Eleanor replied. They share a neural connection that science can't fully explain. They feel what the other feels, see what the other sees, but it's expanding beyond just each other. They sense people's intentions, detect deception. They're the future Victoria wants to create, Thomas added grimly. Humans 2.0, under her control. The tunnel entrance should be here, Father Michael called, examining a bricked-over archway. As Maxwell helped clear debris to expose the passage, Eleanor continued. When I confronted Victoria, she showed me the other children in the program. Some with enhanced strength, others with accelerated cognitive development. All treated as research subjects rather than human beings. Her voice hardened. That's when I knew I had to disappear with our daughters. Why not come to me? Maxwell asked, the question that had haunted him for 7 years. Eleanor met his gaze directly. Because the financial trail led straight to you, Maxwell, and Victoria convinced me you'd approved everything. The forgotten freight tunnel stretched before them like a time capsule. Brick-lined walls glistening with moisture, rusted tracks still embedded in the concrete floor. Father Michael led with a small flashlight, navigating the labyrinth from childhood memory. We should be heading toward the river, he whispered. There's an access point near the old harbor that was never sealed. Maxwell walked beside Eleanor, the twins between them. A family configuration that should have felt natural but instead carried 7 years of absence and mistrust. The silence between them was broken only by the distant sounds of pursuit echoing through the tunnels. You could have investigated, Eleanor finally said, her voice low. Instead of just accepting I was dead. Maxwell's jaw tightened. I hired 3 separate private investigators. All reported conclusive evidence confirming your death. Death certificate, cremation records, witness statements, all fabricated, I now realize. Eleanor glanced at him, surprise evident in her expression. I never stopped looking for answers, Maxwell continued. But Victoria's people were always one step ahead, feeding me just enough closure to keep me from discovering the truth. Behind them, Thomas and Sarah maintained a vigilant watch while Jennifer tended to a cut on Father Michael's hand where he'd injured himself clearing the tunnel entrance. Victoria has resources that rival small nations, Thomas explained. Corporate connections, government contracts, wealthy private investors, all believing they're funding the next great leap in human evolution. Which they are, Eleanor said quietly, looking at her daughters. Just not in the ethical way they imagine. The twins moved in perfect tandem, occasionally touching the tunnel walls as if reading the history of the place through their fingertips. The men above us have split into 3 groups, Lily announced suddenly. They're trying to surround us, Rose added. 7 minutes until they reach the harbor exit, they concluded together. Sarah raised an eyebrow. That's unsettling, but useful, Maxwell noted, his protective instincts rising as he observed his daughters, these extraordinary children he was only just beginning to know. They reached a junction where the tunnel branched in 3 directions. Father Michael hesitated. I don't remember this split. Left, the twins said confidently. When the adults hesitated, they pointed to faint markings on the wall, maintenance symbols from a century ago. As they continued, Maxwell turned to Sarah. What did you find in my financial records? Your CFO created a sophisticated money laundering operation, she explained. Funds moved through shell companies, ultimately supporting Reinhardt's black budget research while making it appear we're personally directing the transfers. Edward has been with me since I started my company, Maxwell said, disbelief coloring his voice. Victoria must have placed him years ago, anticipating I might eventually be useful. Or anticipating you might meet Eleanor, Thomas suggested. Victoria doesn't leave connections to chance. The group reached a maintenance room where the tunnel intersected with newer utility conduits. They paused to rest, keeping voices low. We need a plan beyond escape, Sarah said pragmatically. Victoria will never stop hunting you, all of you. The evidence on this drive is our leverage, Eleanor replied, patting her backpack. Project Genesis violates every ethical standard in medical research, not to mention international law. Evidence needs a platform, Maxwell countered. Victoria has connections throughout media, medicine, and government. Who would we trust to expose her? A moment of silence followed as the reality of their situation sank in. We need more than evidence, Thomas finally said. We need allies, resources, a strategy. Maxwell looked at Eleanor, then at his daughters. 7 years of grief crystallized into determination. I have resources, my company, my connections, everything I've built. The very empire Victoria has been using against us, Eleanor reminded him. Then we'll use it against her, Maxwell said firmly, starting with identifying everyone in my organization connected to Reinhardt. The twins approached, their identical faces serious. We can help, Lily offered. We can tell when people are lying, Rose explained. We've been practicing, they added. Together. Eleanor's expression mixed pride with concern. Their abilities are growing stronger each year. Victoria wants to study them, control them. But they're children, not experiments. Maxwell knelt to meet his daughter's eyes. I missed 6 years of your lives. I can never get that back. But I promise you this, Victoria will never touch you again. For the first time, the twins smiled, mirrored expressions that transformed their solemn faces. In that moment, fragile trust began forming between a father and the daughters he never knew existed. Harbor exit ahead, Father Michael called softly. And I hear water. The abandoned harbor access opened onto a maintenance platform above the Chicago River. Dawn was breaking, painting the city skyline in hues of gold and crimson as the group emerged from the tunnels. We can't go back to any of our known locations, Sarah said, scanning the waterfront for surveillance. Victoria's reach is too extensive. I have a property they don't know about, Maxwell offered. A converted warehouse in West Loop registered under a holding company. I use it for art storage. Thomas raised an eyebrow. Art storage? Eleanor always said I needed hobbies beyond work, Maxwell replied with the ghost of a smile. I started collecting after I thought you died. Eleanor's expression softened momentarily before returning to vigilance. We need transportation that can't be traced. I know someone, Sarah said, making a brief call on a burner phone. 20 minutes. As they waited in the shadow of an abandoned grain elevator, Maxwell watched the twins exploring the shoreline, collecting interesting stones and examining them with scientific precision. They're extraordinary, he said quietly to Eleanor. They're in danger, she countered. Always will be as long as Victoria believes they belong to her. Thomas joined them, lowering his voice. We need to understand exactly what we're up against. Victoria's network extends far beyond Reinhardt Institute. I've been tracking her operations for years, Eleanor replied, moving constantly to stay ahead of her agents. There are research facilities in Switzerland, Singapore, a remote location in Chile, and somewhere in northern Canada. Multiple black sites, Thomas nodded grimly, each specializing in different aspects of genetic enhancement. Sarah returned from securing their transportation. How many children are we talking about? Dozens that I know of, Eleanor answered. Some born to surrogate mothers, others to women like me who didn't know their pregnancies had been manipulated. The funding required would be astronomical, Maxwell observed. That's where you come in, Thomas said. Sarah and I spent all night analyzing your company's financial structure. Victoria has been using Thornton Enterprises as more than just a source of funding. It's a laundering mechanism for the entire project. Maxwell's expression darkened. Show me. Thomas produced a tablet with elaborate financial diagrams. Your CFO, Edward Winters, created a parallel financial structure within your company. Legitimate development projects serve as cover for moving money from Victoria's global investors through your accounts, making the funds appear clean before they reach Reinhardt's research operations. This explains the irregularities I could never quite pin down, Maxwell said, scanning the complex. Money trails. Edward always had plausible explanations. He's been Victoria's plant from the beginning, Eleanor confirmed. Before we even met, she was positioning her pieces. Sarah pointed to a pattern in the transfers. The scale suggests investors beyond just wealthy individuals. These look like government black budgets, possibly military applications. Victoria sells different promises to different investors, Eleanor explained. Longevity treatments for billionaires, enhanced soldiers for military, interest, disease resistance for medical foundations, but her true goal is reshaping human evolution itself. A battered van approached along the service road. Sarah signaled to the others, "Our ride." As they climbed into the vehicle, the twins suddenly froze, their eyes unfocused. More children, Lily whispered. Like us, but different, Rose continued. They're scared. They finished together. Eleanor knelt before them. What do you see? The twins closed their eyes, their breathing synchronized. White rooms, Lily began. Tests every day, Rose added. Some can run very fast. Some never sleep. Some can remember everything. Singapore, Switzerland, Chile, Canada. They know about us. They're waiting. Eleanor looked up at the others, her face pale. Their connection to the other children is growing stronger. They're linking somehow across thousands of miles. Is that possible? Sarah asked Thomas. We're far beyond conventional science, he replied. The modifications Victoria made to these children's neural structures are unprecedented. They're not just experiments, Maxwell said with quiet anger. They're children being held against their will. As the van pulled away, heading toward the West Loop warehouse, Maxwell made a decision. We need to expose everything. Not just to save our family, but all the children in Victoria's program. Eleanor nodded, years of mistrust beginning to crack in the face of his determination. The evidence I've gathered proves the illegal experimentation, but Victoria's network of influence can bury any conventional exposure attempt. Then we don't use conventional methods, Maxwell replied. We use her own network against her. Maxwell's art warehouse resembled a fortress from the outside. Nondescript brick walls, minimal windows, industrial loading doors secured with state-of-the-art locks. Inside, however, it was transformed. One section housed his art collection, while another contained a fully equipped living space and high-tech communications center. I created this after Eleanor's death, Maxwell explained as the group settled in. Somewhere I could work in complete privacy. Or hide if necessary, Sarah observed astutely. Over the next 48 hours, they barely slept, piecing together their strategy while monitoring Victoria's movements. Thomas and Jennifer analyzed the medical evidence from Eleanor's hard drive documenting violations of international bioethics protocols. Sarah used her law enforcement contacts to quietly identify potential allies in the FBI and Interpol. Father Michael provided pastoral care to the emotionally exhausted group, particularly the twins, who were experiencing increasingly vivid connections to Victoria's other test subjects. Maxwell worked the financial angle, tracing every dollar that had flowed through his company into Project Genesis. Victoria's scheduled to deliver the keynote at the International Biotechnology Conference tomorrow at McCormick Place, he announced. She's bringing major investors to announce a breakthrough in regenerative medicine. She's going public with a sanitized version of her research, Eleanor said, studying the conference agenda, positioning herself for acclaim while hiding the unethical foundations. Perfect timing, Maxwell replied. The world's scientific media will be watching. Their plan crystallized. Maxwell would confront Victoria publicly during her keynote while Sarah coordinated with trusted law enforcement contacts to raid key Reinhardt facilities. Using coordinates from Eleanor's files, Thomas and Jennifer would release comprehensive medical evidence to regulatory authorities and trusted journalists simultaneously, while Father Michael would escort Eleanor and the twins to safety at a location known only to him. Victoria will have security throughout the conference center, Sarah warned. Professional contractors, possibly with government training. I'm counting on it, Maxwell replied. We need to keep her occupied while the raids happen. Eleanor approached Maxwell, as the others prepared. Your plan puts you directly in harm's way. I've been in harm's way since I thought I lost you, he answered quietly. Just didn't know it. A fragile moment of reconnection passed between them, broken when the twins approached. We want to help, they said together. The other children are waiting, Lily continued. They're ready to resist, Rose added. Eleanor knelt before her daughters. It's too dangerous for you to be at the conference. We don't need to be there physically, they replied with unsettling synchronicity. The International Biotechnology Conference transformed McCormick Place into a showcase of cutting-edge science. Victoria Reinhardt arrived with an entourage of assistants and security, her elegant suit and confident stride projecting the image of a visionary rather than a predator. Maxwell entered separately, using his status as a major Chicago developer to secure a VIP pass. Sarah and Thomas positioned themselves strategically throughout the venue, coordinating via encrypted communications with teams on 3 continents, waiting for Maxwell's signal. Victoria took the stage to enthusiastic applause, her presentation materials displaying the Reinhardt Institute's public-facing research. Today marks a turning point in human medicine, she began. Regenerative treatments that will transform recovery from injury, extend quality of life, and, perhaps one day, end cellular degeneration entirely. From his seat in the 3rd row, Maxwell studied the woman who had destroyed his family. Behind Victoria's polished exterior, he now recognized the calculating ambition that had orchestrated their suffering. The applications extend beyond medicine, Victoria continued, advancing to slides showing remarkable tissue regeneration. Imagine soldiers who heal from injuries in days rather than months, emergency responders who can endure toxic environments, children born naturally immune to cancers and degenerative diseases. Maxwell rose from his seat, approaching the stage. Victoria faltered momentarily as she recognized him, recovering quickly with professional poise. Maxwell Thornton, she acknowledged smoothly. Chicago's premier developer. Are you interested in our medical facility expansion? I'm interested in Project Genesis, Maxwell replied, his voice carrying through the hall. The children in white rooms in Switzerland, Singapore, Chile, and Canada. The illegal genetic experiments. The lives you've destroyed. Security personnel moved toward Maxwell as murmurs rippled through the audience. This man is clearly disturbed, Victoria said into the microphone, maintaining her composure. Security, please escort him out. Tell them about Eleanor Thornton, Maxwell continued as guards reached him. Tell them how you manipulated her pregnancy, experimented on her unborn children, then forced her to fake her death when she discovered the truth. Victoria's smile hardened. Mr. Thornton recently suffered a psychological break following hallucinations about his deceased wife. It's quite tragic. As security surrounded Maxwell, chaos erupted across the venue. The conference center screen suddenly switched from Victoria's presentation to surveillance footage from Reinhardt's facilities. Children in clinical settings undergoing tests, medical data showing genetic modifications, financial records connecting it all to Victoria. "What is this?" Victoria demanded, looking off stage where her technical team scrambled helplessly. Simultaneously across the globe, coordinated raids began at Reinhardt facilities. In the warehouse, Eleanor watched with the twins as they sat in deep concentration. Their eyes closed, hands clasped. "The children are helping," Eleanor whispered to Father Michael. "They're showing each other how to unlock the doors." The aftermath of the Reinhardt Institute's exposure unfolded not as a single triumphant moment, but as a complex cascade of consequences. 3 weeks after the conference, Maxwell sat in the living room of a remote lakeside cabin in northern Michigan, watching Eleanor, still adjusting to reclaiming her true identity, as she reviewed news reports on her tablet. "The Singapore facility director is cooperating with authorities," she noted, "trading testimony for leniency." Maxwell nodded, still processing the whirlwind events since Victoria's public downfall. "The Swiss government has taken custody of 17 children found at the Zurich facility. Their biological parents are being traced." Outside, the twins played by the water's edge, their synchronized movements a reminder of their extraordinary connection. They appeared like typical 6-year-olds enjoying summer freedom, yet occasionally they would freeze in unison, their attention captured by something beyond normal perception. "They're still connected to the others," Eleanor said, following Maxwell's gaze. "It's fading gradually as distance and time separate them, but they describe it like a chorus of voices becoming whispers." Sarah arrived that afternoon, bringing updates from Chicago. They gathered around the cabin's wooden table as she unpacked files and connected her laptop. "Victoria's legal team is formidable," she reported. "They're claiming all research was conducted under proper protocols, that the more controversial aspects were the work of rogue scientists without her knowledge." "Of course they are," Thomas said bitterly. "The wealthy rarely face real consequences." "Some facilities remain operational," Sarah continued, "particularly those with government contracts. They've rebranded as advanced medical research centers, while quietly destroying incriminating evidence." Father Michael, who had been preparing lunch in the kitchen, joined them. "The children are the priority now. Many face medical and psychological challenges from their modified genetics. Not to mention legal limbo," Jennifer added. "Their very existence challenges current regulatory frameworks. Are they victims, subjects, or something entirely new in the eyes of the law?" Maxwell listened to the sobering reality of their partial victory. The exposure of Project Genesis had not delivered the clean resolution they'd hoped for. Instead, it had revealed the true complexity of confronting an enterprise embedded within legitimate medical research, private wealth, and government interests. "We've won the battle but not the war," he acknowledged. "Victoria's network is damaged, but not destroyed." "Which is why we need the foundation," Eleanor said, determination in her voice. "A legitimate organization with the resources to advocate for these children, fund ethical research into their conditions, and provide safe environments for them to develop." The Eleanor Thornton Foundation had begun as an idea during their planning sessions. Now, with Maxwell's resources behind it, it was becoming reality, though not without resistance. "The scientific community is divided," Thomas reported. "Some colleagues view these children as unfortunate victims of unethical experimentation. Others see them as invaluable research subjects who could advance medical knowledge by decades." "Their children first," Eleanor insisted. "Their welfare comes before scientific curiosity." As evening approached, Maxwell found Eleanor on the dock, watching the twins who had discovered a family of turtles and were studying them with scientific interest. "I've been afraid for so long," she confessed as he sat beside her, running, hiding, protecting them from becoming specimens in Victoria's vision of evolution. "You don't have to run anymore," Maxwell said gently. Eleanor turned to him, her eyes reflecting 7 years of hardship. "Can we really start again after everything that's happened, after all the mistrust?" "We start with the truth," Maxwell replied. "All of it, no matter how painful. Victoria manipulated both of us, but she didn't destroy what matters most. There Conversation was interrupted by the twins' approach, their expressions serious. "Victoria isn't finished," Lily stated. "She has other places we can't see," Rose continued. "And more children," they concluded together. Eleanor sighed, gathering her daughters close. "We know, sweethearts. That's why our work is just beginning." Later, that night, as the twins slept, the adults gathered to discuss next steps. Maxwell had converted the cabin's basement into a secure command center with encrypted communications and multiple backup systems. "The foundation's legal structure is in place," he explained. "I've committed half my personal fortune as initial funding. We'll establish rehabilitation centers for the children, advocacy teams to navigate the legal challenges, and research partnerships with ethical institutions." "You'll face powerful opposition," Sarah warned. "Victoria's investors include people who can make governments listen. Then we'll need to be louder," Maxwell replied, the businessman in him emerging. "More strategic, more persistent." As the meeting concluded, Maxwell found himself alone with Eleanor in the kitchen. The distance between them had begun to diminish, but 7 years of separation couldn't be erased overnight. "I never stopped loving you," he admitted quietly. "Even when I thought you were gone." Eleanor's hand found his across the counter. "I never stopped loving you either. That's what made the doubt so painful, believing you might have been part of Victoria's plan." Their fingers intertwined, a small step toward healing what had been broken. Outside, under the Michigan stars, the twins sat on the dock, their hands clasped as they sent silent messages of hope to children they had never met, but whose experiences they uniquely understood. 2 years later, the Eleanor Thornton Foundation headquarters occupied a modern, sun-filled building on Chicago's North Side. Its open architecture and transparent glass walls represented the organization's commitment to ethical science conducted in the light, not in shadowy laboratories. Maxwell stood in his office watching 8-year-old Lily and Rose in the Foundation's specialized classroom below. Their dark hair, now longer and often worn in matching braids, caught the morning light as they worked with 3 other children rescued from Reinhardt facilities. Though still identical in appearance, the twins had gradually developed subtle differences in personality, Lily more analytical, Rose more intuitive, a natural divergence that Eleanor celebrated as evidence of their growing individuality. "The Zurich Regulatory Board approved our research protocol," Eleanor announced, entering with a tablet displaying the official documentation. At 44, she had reclaimed much of her former self, the brilliant research physician now directing her expertise toward understanding and helping the children affected by Project Genesis. "That makes 7 countries now," Maxwell replied, pride evident in his voice. "The Foundation's credibility is growing." Eleanor joined him at the window. "The Chilean children arrived next week. Their regenerative capabilities are even more pronounced than the twins. My bones heal within hours." "And their psychological assessment?" "Significant trauma," Eleanor sighed. Like most of Victoria's subjects, they were isolated from normal childhood experiences, treated as specimens rather than people. Maxwell nodded solemnly. Their work had evolved beyond mere exposure of Victoria's illegal operations into a comprehensive effort to rehabilitate the children and establish ethical frameworks for addressing their unique needs. The past 2 years had brought challenges neither had anticipated. Initial public skepticism about designer children had required careful education campaigns. Research institutions had been reluctant to acknowledge the ethical breaches that had occurred within respected scientific communities. Government agencies had moved to classify much of the evidence, citing national security concerns. Yet there had been victories too. 36 children had been removed from research facilities and placed in specialized care. The Foundation had established protocols for genetic monitoring that were being adopted internationally. Most importantly, the twins and other children were beginning to experience normal childhoods while receiving the specialized support their unique biology required. "Sarah called this morning," Maxwell said. "Victoria's appeal was denied. She remains under house arrest in Switzerland." Eleanor's expression darkened. "House arrest in a luxury alpine estate is hardly justice." But her access to research facilities and funding has been severely restricted, Maxwell reminded her. The network is unraveling. Thomas's testimony before the UN Bioethics Committee next month should help tighten international oversight. Below, they watched as the twins simultaneously looked up toward the office window, waving in perfect unison despite not having seen their parents arrive. Their extrasensory awareness had stabilized over time, less overwhelming but still remarkable. That evening, the Thornton family gathered in the garden of their Lake Forest home. As Maxwell grilled dinner, Eleanor helped the twins with their science project, a study of butterfly metamorphosis that particularly fascinated them with its parallels to their own evolving abilities. "Dad," Lily called, "we learned something new today." Maxwell approached, noting the serious expression both girls wore, their important discovery face. "We can help the others heal faster," Rose explained. "Not just their bodies," Lily continued. "Their memories, they finished together." Eleanor knelt beside them. "You mean the traumatic memories?" The twins nodded in synchrony. "We can reach them. When they sleep, show them they're not alone. Teach them what you taught us." Eleanor and Maxwell exchanged a look of wonder and concern, the same complex mixture of emotions that had defined their journey as parents to these extraordinary children. Later, with the twins asleep, Maxwell and Eleanor sat on their porch watching fireflies illuminate the summer darkness. Their relationship had gradually rebuilt itself, different from before but perhaps stronger for having been tested. "Victoria once told me that evolution requires pressure," Eleanor said quietly. "That comfort breeds stagnation, while adversity forces adaptation." "She wasn't entirely wrong," Maxwell replied, "but she missed something crucial." "What's that?" "That true evolution isn't just about survival or physical adaptation." He took her hand, the gesture natural now after 2 years of rediscovery. "It's about growing in our capacity for connection, for empathy, for protection of those more vulnerable. That's the real future of humanity." Eleanor leaned against his shoulder, watching the fireflies rise like stars from the grass. Victoria wanted to control evolution. Instead, she simply set it free in ways she never imagined. In their bedroom, the twins dreamed in perfect synchrony, their minds reaching across distances to connect with others like them. In their shared dreamscape, they created something Victoria could never have engineered with all her genetic manipulations. A community of understanding, a network of healing, a family built not from modified DNA but from the most fundamental human need to belong.